Hello, YouTube. We are live. Sorry if this was a little impromptu. I know usually I give you a little bit more notice, but it had to do because I want to go to a homeschooling conference tonight, so I won't be able to live stream tonight when I typically would do so. So, last night we had a nice conversation about John Taylor Gatto and the 14 lessons taught at elite private schools that public school students are denied. Now, quick overview. John Taylor Gatto, he was the New York City Teacher of the Year in 1988, 1989. He was the New York State Teacher of the Year in 1990 before he abruptly resigned. And he took out a one-page op-ed in the New York Times basically saying that he could no longer participate in a system that is designed to essentially dumb down children, to retard their intellectual development. And he went on to write a bunch of very impactful books, Dumbing Us Down, Weapons of Mass Instruction. This is basics, must-read material for all parents, especially if you are getting into homeschooling or alternative education. So, I'm not going to get too in depth about what we discussed last night because, well, you could go back and watch the stream from last night. But the first 5 lessons that are taught at elite public schools, private schools that are not taught at public school, are students form a unique theory on human nature. What makes people tick? And they derive that theory from the study of history, philosophy, theology, literature, and law. Now, one of the themes you'll find throughout these 14 lessons taught at the elite private schools is students are routinely asked to formulate their own unique theories because the priority is critical thinking, not memorization. If you want to work at an office and wash, rinse, repeat, wake up every morning early, go to your corporation, yeah, memorization might be useful. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to be a sovereign, independent person able to take care of themselves, well, you need critical thinking ability. You need to be able to think on the fly and make adjustments. For example, when you're doing a live stream and your puppy is eating the wire right next to you, you have to be able to adjust. Lucy, what are you doing, girl? I'm just doing a live stream, and then we'll be done, all right? We're going to run around. We're going to have a good time. I promise. I promise, Lucy. You know, this is becoming a trend when I start streaming. You start making trouble. I think she just does it for attention. You guys want to see Lucy? Come here, Lucy. Say hi to the people. This is Lucy. She's 5 months old. She's a little shelty. Probably noticed she looks like Lassie. And she is our homeschool dog. You're a good girl. You want to sit on my lap or are you going to squirm? All right. Maybe a little better if you sit on my lap. So, a common theme throughout the 14 lessons taught at elite private schools are students are challenged with, yeah, you're saying that public schools create a poor mindset. Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I'm probably going to do a stream later this week on the philosophy behind early childhood education, because the primary objective of early childhood education should be the development of a proper mindset, an entrepreneurial mindset, a mindset of abundance, and pretty much a glass half full outlook on the world, along with critical thinking skills. You get those, yeah, my wife's in the chat, but you put those things together and you're creating the foundation, the building blocks for a person that will eventually be sovereign, be confident enough to start their own business and have the skill set so that they can prosper in what is still a relatively free market. You're killing me, Lucy. You're killing me. Babe, I might have to give you Lucy. Yeah, I'm going to give you Lucy. Hold on. You're killing me, love. You're killing me. She's a good girl. She's a puppy. All right, what was I saying? So the first lesson learned of the 14 is form a unique theory on human nature. We talked about this in more detail last night, but an understanding of history, philosophy, theology, literature, and law. And by forming a unique theory, what you're doing is you're training a young person to think about what moves people, what makes them tick, how do they control a crowd. If they're going to be giving public speeches, how do they, hey, prime butchers in the house, how do they keep the attention of the people that are listening? How do I keep your attention now? This is a skill set that can be developed over time. If they're going to work in a corporate boardroom, right? Or you're working for a corporation, whatever it is that you're doing, an understanding of what makes people tick will help you out in life. An example I gave last night was focused on job interviews, right? When you go to school and they're preparing you for job interviews. I remember this when I was at Cortland, when I was getting my bachelor's degree in 7 to 12 history education. And they did all these talks on how our resumes had to be just right. Your resume has to be perfect because if you're going to get this job, if there's one comma that's wrong, they're just going to take your resume and throw it out. Well, what's on paper is nice, but that's not what moves people. What moves people is the impression that you make, if you understand what makes people tick. So a lot of young people, they're told that you have to be very formal, right? Everything you have to do is very formal. You go to the interview and you want to be very rigid, very uptight. You want to be quick and to the point with your answers. Well, no, that's the exact opposite. I've done interviews. I've interviewed people to hire them to work. And primarily, if you understand human nature, people are looking for, they're basically asking, yeah, you need the basics. Is this person qualified? But if you want to get the job, they're asking, do I like this person? And can I tolerate being around them? So if you're on an interview and you feel out the person giving you the interview and maybe you crack a good joke at the right time, maybe you say something completely out of left field, whereas the school system might tell you, oh no, you don't want to do that. If you could read the situation right, well, that might work to your advantage. So you want a young person from a young age to focus on what makes people tick. So you look at that from a historical standpoint. You can, I've been asking a lot of questions about World War I lately. So going into World War I, for example, something like ridiculous, something like 30% of the American population was German. So how do you convince the population to go to war with Germany? Well, what they did was they did a lot of propaganda surrounding Germans murdering babies and raping women. Now, it was made up, it was propaganda, it was lies, but you understand human nature from that. Because German Americans were calling for war with Germany, many of which was their family. So you could start to understand that human beings are driven by emotion. Human beings are very often irrational. So if your child's older and they're doing a marketing campaign, rather than do something logical, it might be in their benefit to do something funny, to do something emotional. But understanding human emotions is something that is taught at these elite private schools that unfortunately public school students are denied. And you get into the other areas, philosophy, which is you want to talk about what makes people tick. What is the reason that people do things? You see it all the time where people virtue signal, right? People will come out for one political issue or another, and if you question them on it, you see this all the time with people, man on the streets, right? You get a guy with a microphone, you go out onto the streets and you say, hey, what is your opinion about this political candidate? And they say, oh, I really hate that person. All right, can you tell me one of their positions? No. So from a philosophical standpoint, you say, okay, well, it's not actually a logical decision they're coming to about a person's positions. It's probably based on social status and social pressure that they're formulating their opinion. They're saying what they're supposed to say. You can start to understand human nature. Of course, with theology, with religion. Prime Butcher in the house. I do a Bible study with him. He's the man. Understanding how religion moves people. And we see this. There's a book, Superclass, you could read. David Comproth or something like that. And basically he identifies, we hear about the deep state. By the way, the book's complete propaganda, but you could learn from propaganda if you're able to think critically. And in this book, he identifies 6,000 people that, what he says, which encompass the globalist, the global world government, if you're familiar with this type of thing, deep state. So the people that are able to move policy across country lines. And among these people, there are the powerful imams, there's the Pope, the Vatican. Religious leaders are some of those powerful people. They have the ability to sway people's minds. Slatweasel, you're the man, and thanks for posting my links on Owen's channel again today. I really, you're trying to grow, and that makes a big difference. There's something very powerful, in my opinion, about forming groups and communities, and rather than everyone look out for themselves, people should try to grow together, because that makes, that's where strength comes from, and that's how you empower yourself. You want to talk about a theory of human nature. I was talking to my friend about this the other day. He was looking to do business with someone. I said, yeah, well, take him out to dinner. He said, take him out to dinner? I said, yeah, you take him out to dinner. You buy him dinner. He said, well, I don't know. I'm trying to do business with him. I said, you don't think that's business? You want to talk about why these elite private schools talk about an understanding of human nature? I said, buddy, has anyone ever unprompted took you out and just bought you lunch? I know the answer because I've done that for him because he's my friend. He said, yeah. He said, how do you feel about that person after they take you out to dinner and buy you food or buy you lunch? Feel pretty good about them. I said, well, you got to understand human nature. You're looking to do business with this guy, and you're going up to him and you're saying, do for me, do for me, do for me. Well, do something for him. And he'll like you, and then he'll want to do business with you. So this is the type of thing that is left out of the education system that they teach at these elite private schools. The second lesson, strong experience with the active literacies, reading, writing, and public speaking. Oh, you know what? You guys should be able to see this. Sorry about that. It'd be better if you could see what I was reading. There you go. If you guys are watching on Instagram, if you go to FFR News on YouTube, you can see what I'm showing. Live video pause, get that back. So, all right. A strong experience in the active literacies. I worded it here as reading, writing, and public speaking, but this is also known as the classical trivium. It's grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And basically what it comes down to is, and this is obvious, and you think they would teach this in public schools, but it is a command of the English language. There is a book. I don't know where it is right here. Oh, is that it? This little book. You want to talk about how to educate your child better, right? That's why people come here. That's why they come to me. Look how thin this is. This is The Lost Tools of Learning by Dorothy Sayers. She came out of Oxford and pushed against the system a little bit. So the classical trivium of education, which they still teach at these elite private schools, but the rest of us, we're just not worthy of learning it, is the format, the way the elites have been taught for hundreds, thousands of years. So for most of human history, only very wealthy, powerful families were able to afford an education because people lived in rural areas and they would have a bunch of children, which by the way, that's what you should try to get back to. That's certainly what I'm trying to get back to. And their children would have to work to support the farm and they would live good lives. And only the elites, not to mention before the printing press, obviously people couldn't have books because if you have to handwrite a book, you're going to charge a lot of money for people to buy it, right? So people So the elites would get educated, and Dorothy Sayers explains how they would be educated in this book. They would learn grammar, logic, and rhetoric. I say grammar, you say, oh yeah, of course you teach children grammar. Well, it's beyond that. The example I gave last night, and I'll just beat the dead horse, I think it's effective rhetoric and persuasion. I used to try to always say different things. Now I try to say the same thing again and again and again, because if you get it, it will only result in you educating your children better. Repetition is a form of rhetoric. It's a skill. It's something I've had to learn myself. So if you were to join an elite debate club or an elite debate team, maybe Drop Bear, thank you, and welcome to the stream. So if you were to join an elite debate club, Princeton, Harvard, or just anything, the first thing they would tell you have to do at the onset of every debate is you have to force your opponent to define their terms. Because if you don't force them to define their terms, then you can use a word, have that word, the word has one definition, and then you could start to bend the definition, so in a way you could bend the argument. So like, give an example. So recently I read the book, well, he read it to me, Quantum of Conscience. He says some stuff that I think is just off the wall, like, essentially, I mean, you have to watch his channel to see what I'm talking about. And you'll start listening to him, be like, this guy's crazy. But then he will say some of the most profoundly deep things you have ever heard, and be like, man, you have to keep listening. So, I mean, basically the essential argument he makes is that, basically what he's saying is no one could actually prove that reality exists. He's basically making the argument that the movie The Matrix is closer to being a documentary than, a truth drop, than, sci-fi, science fiction. Saying that theoretically we could be plugged into a system, and he makes pretty good arguments. I don't view the world like he does exactly, but he's an interesting guy. So he starts to say, so he makes this argument, the world is not real, and he goes into physics and stuff like that, like 99% of what we touch, 99% of what we touch is just open space, which is all true, right? Like, apparently, if you get into physics, like, you have this pump, my hand's not actually touching the pump, and a physicist will tell you this. So what he's saying is that our brains are receptors, blah, 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 you get the point. Well, then he starts making arguments, and he'll get into whatever, name your fake news event. And he'll point out, okay, well, the media lied about this event, right? The media said, whatever, fake news that they report on all the time. The media said that Hillary Clinton didn't have a coughing episode and faint, when she clearly had a coughing episode and fainted, right? So he said, well, they lied about that, so it's fake, so reality is fake. Well, he's bending the argument. No, are you saying that there's not reality, that reality doesn't exist, or are you saying that people lie and try to create a fictitious reality that you should believe in? Now, don't get me wrong, I think the guy's brilliant. I actually think people should listen to his stuff, but you have to be a certain level of awake to take on stuff like that. But the broader point is that when you get in a debate or you start to listen to someone, you have to force them to define their terms. So grammar, of course, with that, you want to know where commas go, where semicolons go, stuff like that. Logic, what I promote is, this is why I talk about philosophy so much. People should do philosophy. You want people to have what I call intellectual self-defense. Slap Weasel, I'd be happy to give you a wrench. I don't even know how to give a wrench. Let's see. Add moderator. Slap Weasel is now a moderator for your channel. I think you have a wrench now. And yeah, Slap Weasel is definitely a legend, and he's been very helpful to me. I really appreciate it. So logic. There's this guy, Richard Grove. Brilliant man, forensic historian. He has the Peace Revolution as his podcast. You should go back to the Peace Revolution, start watching in episode 1, and work your way up to episode 90, and he will fundamentally alter your entire view of the world. I mean, that's the type of intellect this guy has. He's incredible. So the first time I came across this concept, it's called intellectual self-defense. And it is creating the habit in a person of removing logical contradictions from their thought process. And this is taught at these elite private schools. So basically, what you want to do is train a young person's mind to identify contradictions within arguments that they make, within arguments that other people make, or whatever it is that they read, and to remove those contradictions. And with that, they start to identify contradictions within their own worldview, and you say, okay, well, if I have a contradiction, then I need to adjust my worldview so that there's no contradiction. It's the same concept of, all right, well, a lot of people that watch this channel say, all right, well, clearly a lot that goes on in the world is fake news, right? There's a lot of fake narratives, narrative-driven news. And it's hard to weed through it all. Well, what if your mind was a computer, right? If you turn on your computer and you don't have your McAfee system, what happens? Well, you don't have your McAfee system, so your computer gets a virus. Well, people without intellectual self-defense that don't know grammar, logic, and rhetoric, their mind gets viruses. And all of a sudden, they believe all of these crazy things. They can't distinguish fake news from reality and that type of thing. So with intellectual self-defense, by recognizing contradictions within your own thought patterns and altering your worldview, that's the Peace Revolution. It's actually, you just go into Google, type in the Peace Revolution, and you click on it, and it's Through Tragedy and Hope. It's like the first or second link. But it's really good stuff. It's I don't know Rich. He's retweeted a few of my things over the years, but I haven't had the pleasure of. Maybe I'll do a sit down with Rich one day. But he's a smart guy. But so you want to have intellectual self-defense so that your mind is strong. Well, this is what we want to teach to our children, and this is what they teach at these elite private schools. And then rhetoric. Many of you follow Owen Benjamin. Well, his father taught rhetoric, and this is why Owen is such a good communicator. This is why he's so capable of commanding crowds of people, because rhetoric is the art of transferring your ideas, your knowledge to other people, and knowledge doesn't become wisdom until it can be transferred from one person to another. So, for me, I have a very logical mind. My thoughts are always, all right, well, I'll just lay this out logically and people will get it. Well, what you find when you get out into society is that people are generally emotional, which is why I say when you try to wake someone up politically, right, never talk to them about present-day politics, because all they're going to do is react emotionally. That's what they're trained to do. Talk to them about historical events and then say, you see all these inconsistencies? But you start to understand that concept. The better way to do it is use political cartoons, right? Use a picture that could say 1,000 words. That's why in the European Union, they're banning memes, right? And they don't want you to be able to meme because a picture is powerful. It's rhetorical. It's persuasion. So that's the classical tribute. Number 3, insight into major institutions. I think that goes without saying. The example I gave last night was with the mainstream media. Well, if you have your 13-year-old do a project where they do original research into the funding of the mainstream media, they'll find out that 5 corporations control 90% of what is masquerading as diversity of opinion. So in reality, it looks like, you have the Huffington Post and CNN and Fox News, and yeah, that's really opposition. Anyone who's awake knows that's controlled opposition. But you have all these choices in news, and, of course we're getting the truth. The truth's going to get out there. But then you have them do the research into it, right? And they say, wait a second, only 5 corporations, so a small handful of people control almost all of the information out in the public square. You have them do research into institutions like social media, and they could get into primary documents released by WikiLeaks. I could show you the documents in which Eric Schmidt and Google were assisting Hillary Clinton and her political campaign, dating back to before she even announced she was running for office. So you say, okay, well, a lot of these institutions are very political, so I have to be careful with them. You have them look into the banking institutions, and what they find out when they search the banking institutions is that our money, these paper rectangles that we all worship, they're not backed by anything. It's fiat currency. And they're just random numbers on a computer screen. Money it's a concept. It only gets its backing by the force of the United States military. And you start to understand, say, okay, so the bank lends you this money, and then why did they do that? And you have them look into, okay, what is interest? What is compound interest? So what happens when you take out a loan from the bank? Oh, okay, so I better be very careful then taking out college loans. I better be, primary documents, and that's when you start to get into how to educate a child, everything has to be getting back to primary documents. Because everything that's secondhand, I mean, we turn on the news and you can't get a straight answer about what happened yesterday, but you think you could learn history by the news from 50 years ago? No, you got to get back to the primary documents. You got to hear it from the horse's mouth. So, I mean, that's the beauty of homeschooling, because, you take you study history, you study any historical event. It doesn't matter what it is. You could study the civil rights movement, and you'll get one narrative, and the children will say, okay, well, I want you to memorize all of this information, right? This is what happened with the civil rights movement. These people are good, these people are bad. You have 3 weeks to memorize all this information, repeat it back. Well, all that's teaching is that the textbook, the authority of the textbook, that's where truth comes from. And the authority of the teacher, that's where truth comes from. And you memorize that truth and you say it back. You outsource your thinking to that authority. What it's not teaching is critical thinking. Getting back to the primary documents and formulating, because this is what they do at the elite private schools, formulating original theories about historical events. So you want to study the civil rights movement, read the primary writings of JFK, read the primary writings of Martin Luther King and all the people involved in that and the congressmen, and then you could get a much better understanding as to what actually happened at that time in history. So we want to teach our children, we want to formulate their education so that they understand how these major institutions operate. And there's a variety of ways we can do that, and I show parents how to do that in my plans. I just gave an example where you have your child do research into the funding of the mainstream media. Well, it's an original research project. They get experience in research. They get experience in critical thinking, reading, getting back to primary documents, writing. There's so much value in it. Okay, so let's see. Repeated exercise in good manners. I talked about this on the interview, right? It might not be what you think. Sometimes repeated exercise in good manners might be in certain situations making a joke where others would tell you not to make an impression. Or knowing how to play golf because business is done on the golf course. Or like I gave the example to my friend, I said, you want to do business with this man? Well, take him out to dinner and buy him dinner. And talk about business over dinner. And don't just talk about business, talk about life. Talk about who you are. Talk about what you believe in, what you're interested in. Make jokes, laugh, because those are the type of manners that will help you achieve the objectives you're trying to achieve. And you want your children to understand this. Because what the school system is going to say is that, oh no, good manners this is what they told me in college. Oh, they wouldn't like what I do now. They said, make sure your social media is very, very clean. Because when you go to apply for a job, well, they're going to look up your social media, and if you say anything that's not approved by the big bureaucracies, well, they're not going to hire you, and you're going to have a terrible life and have nothing in life. Well, that's why we need to train our children so that they can be, yes, Liberty Snake Bear, my man. Thanks for coming in and smash that like. By the way, I saw you wrote me, but I get so many inquiries throughout the day that I check them before I go to bed. So I'm gonna check what you wrote before bed. Because if I check them as they come in, it's just be like a chicken without a head. But what was I saying? I lost my train of thought. I don't know. I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? I get distracted. Independent work, repeated. Oh yeah, I was talking about good manners, taking a guy out to dinner, and that's how you get. Oh yeah. So what I was saying is, what was I saying? Take him out to dinner. Oh yeah, they scrub your social media. We want to raise our children, and we want to use these concepts taught in the elite private schools so that they can, and they have the right mindset, so that they can own their own businesses, make their own money, and then they don't have to be afraid to speak their mind, because there's a lot of good people that are just, unfortunately, afraid to speak their mind because, and listen, I don't blame them, because if they do, they could get fired, they could become a social outcast, and, they can't feed their family, they can't pay their mortgage. They're afraid. And by the way, you don't have to be afraid. If you want to wake people up, you don't have to say, ah, ha, ha, the Federal Reserve. No, what you say is you just drop little seeds, right? The best awakenings happen by seeds you plant in people. So, if you're talking to them about banking, say, don't you think it's weird that the United States dropped the gold standard in the 70s? Why would Nixon do that? Yeah, I even read that they had planned that at Bentonwood in the 1950s, and then I don't know. I don't know. I'd be interested in looking into that. That's all you have to say. Nothing more. Because if you tell a person your worldview is fundamentally wrong, they shut you out. But if you drop seeds over time, they'll say, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll look into that. What was he talking about? Independent work, it goes without saying, but at these elite private schools, 80% of work is independent, and that is what I promote with my plan. So that's where I left off yesterday. Now, physical sports are a necessity. Why are physical sports a necessity at these elite schools? Well, first they want you to play team sports because why? It's a great way to learn leadership, how to interact with a group of people, and the focus on leadership should be something planned for at least every month, probably every day in your child's education, because if they have skills in leadership, that's only going to help them in life, right? Whether that's in a corporate boardroom, whether that's they're running their own business, whether that's doing something charitable, it doesn't matter, whatever it is, leadership is very valuable. So you want children to be involved in sports because you want them to be leaders. The next thing that I advocate for, and I do suggest every child, and I've gotten pushback from people that are, oh my God, how can you suggest that my child be involved in something violent? I suggest all children starting at 2 years of age get involved in some type of fighting, whether that be MMA fighting. My son, when he's 2, I'll be enrolling him in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with my friend who's a semi-professional MMA fighter. He owns a gym. But it could be karate, it could be wrestling, it could be boxing, especially for young boys. But this is in the age of bullying. But knowing how to defend yourself, one, is important because you never know when you're put into an unfortunate situation and you have to defend yourself. So because of that, you should make sure at a young age that your child is able to defend themselves. But the other thing it does is it teaches discipline and it gives a person confidence. So one day your child's going to be in a social setting, and whether you like it or not, there's going to be, especially like a young man, people that are willing to be intimidating. Even if they're not going to be violent, maybe they're going to intimidate people to not saying what they want to say. And your child will benefit by having the confidence to know they can defend themselves, to say, no, I don't care if you're being intimidating, I'm going to speak my mind. That's a very important, it's a very important skill to have in life, and it's a very important mindset to develop. And for all the people out there that say, oh my gosh, I can't teach my child to be violent, it does the opposite. For anyone that has been in physical altercations, for anyone that's dealt with a bully, you know that the person least likely to get in a physical altercation is the person that everyone knows can handle themselves and just isn't looking for a physical altercation. So your child's not going to go around being a bully because we raise them to be moral. That's why we don't send them to public school, right? We raise them to be moral, to not bully people. But we don't want them to be sheep. We want them to be shepherds, right? The shepherd has the physical ability to fight off the wolves, but leads the sheep, doesn't bully the sheep, doesn't kill the sheep. So you want your child to be the shepherd in life, and this is what they teach at these elite schools. 7, students form a theory of access on how to get access to any person or institution. In a way, I just demonstrated that by writing my letter to Owen. So basically what I did was I did something for him, right? I created a customized home education plan, which is what people pay me to do this. It takes a ton of work. I get the payment. I do a one-on-one meeting with the family. That's going to take, 45 minutes, an hour, where I talk in depth about their situation. I talk about the strengths and weaknesses they have, the strengths and weaknesses of their children, their child's current level of functioning, their child's education up to this point, the mindset characteristics of their child, the mindset characteristics that they have themselves, right? So I do this one-on-one meeting with them, and then based on that, I put together these plans that are very comprehensive. They involve mindset. There's a whole educational philosophy that goes behind it. We focus on the development of talent stacks. We focus on the development of creative excellence, which is giving your child the ability to bring any thought they have in their mind into physical reality. Art, music, engineering, construction, computer coding. Talent stacks, experience with marketing, with sales, with telling jokes, with incorporating, all of these things. So you want to create these talent stacks based on the needs of, based on the profile of the child, so that child, and then I do the research. So a lot of what I do is generic, and then a lot of what I do is research into what I can do and to make original plans for each individual child. So this is a lot of work that I do when I work with these families. A lot of work that goes into this. It takes hours and hours and hours. Well, theory of access, right? I put hours and hours and hours of my time to make Owen what I think to be a pretty cool and useful plan. And I sent him this plan, and then because of that, he was kind enough to say, oh, look, Bears, this is really cool, right? So that's a theory of access. Well, this is taught at the elite private schools. It's the same thing I told my buddy. I said, listen, you're looking to do business with this guy, we'll take him out to dinner. And people that don't understand, they'll say, oh, well, isn't that using a person? It's not using a person. You're asking them to do something for you. The least you can do is do something for them. And with that, it's just like anything in life. If someone does something kind for you, if someone puts in time for you, and they like what you did, you took them out to dinner, that doesn't mean, I send Owen a plan, that doesn't mean he's going to say, I like the plan, but he sees that I took out the time to do it. So if he likes it, he's going to say, all right, guys, maybe you should check out this guy's channel. You take someone out to dinner, that doesn't mean they're going to do business with you, but they'll say, I like the guy, I'll hear him out. And they teach that at these elite... You want to say hi? You're being super creepy and weird. Say hi to the people.
Hi.
Say hi to the people. This is my beautiful wife. What are you looking for now?
A stapler.
A stapler? That is my stapler.
just need a stapler. That's all this wife wants here.
I don't know where my stapler is.
Would it be bootleg if I taped my paper together? Probably.
Yes, it would be very bootleg. Just don't tape it together. Don't do that at all. That's a terrible idea. Just, yeah, paperclip.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, don't tape your paper together. Don't ever do that. Don't teach your kids to tape their paper.
Desperate times.
There might be paper clips in that little drawer over there.
Bye, guys.
All right, so just if Brady wakes up, just get me and I'll cut the stream because I know you got a test and you're stressed out. So anyway, yeah, that's the theory of access. My wife and I did the consultation. It was well worth the time, and he knows his craft very well. I can't recommend enough how valuable his knowledge is. That's Liberty Snake Bear. It's my main man. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, I think, and I hope it was valuable to you. You know, that's the thing. Like, I do free consultations. So, I mean, some people skip them altogether. But if, you know, if you just want to sit down with me and have a conversation and pick my mind about education, educational philosophy, there's a lot of, I think, a lot that families benefit from that, even if they don't go forward with what I do. So there's the theory of access. 8. Responsibility is essential. Responsibility is an essential part of a curriculum. Always take responsibility when offered. Always deliver more than is asked. So
responsibility is not losing
your paper clips.
my paper clips.
Check this bag. I bet there's paper
Just
clips in
make
here.
pretend I'm not here.
All the places I might have paper clips. So yeah, a good education, you want to have community involvement as much as possible. Just like I spoke earlier that we should work to build a community. Like Zoomer Bear was on my channel the other night. I've never watched. I actually caught some of his stuff last night. He's an interesting guy, but at the time I hadn't really, other than a 3-minute video, watched his stuff. I wasn't that familiar with him. But I said, yeah, I'll have a conversation with you because, you know, I know he's trying to build a following within this community, and when you help people, it only helps yourself. And there's a lesson in that. So your children should be out there in the community, and they should be building communities. And they should be taking responsibility. So, like, if they're doing something through the local church, don't have them just participate. Say to them, you know, as part of your homeschool assignment, I want you to volunteer to do something. So maybe that's bake something, whatever it might be. And with that, what happens? So then it's like, okay, well, the church will say, oh, that's great. Who do you need? Well, I'm going to need probably 3 people to help me out. Okay, well, are there any volunteers? And 3 people at the church, they volunteer. So what happens? Now you have your young, whatever, 14-year-old, and he's actually in a position where he's in a position of authority where he has to delegate responsibilities and be a leader of 3 other people to accomplish a task. And this is the life skills that we want to develop in our children. I posted this on www.instagram.com. What did I post? Classical Learner today on Instagram. I posted this today. But you know, I thought we'd get more traction, whatever. So, all right. It says, okay, there you go. It says, ask permission to use the bathroom. What real world is school preparing children for? Oh, ask permission to use the bathroom? What real world is school preparing children for? And then underneath that, I wrote, I don't know. Anyway, I wrote something along the lines of, you don't prepare children for the real world by keeping them away from the real world. That's probably the worst way to do it. You prepare them by forcing them to be in the real world, right? You prepare them by giving them life experience. So having them take responsibility in community events is a great way to do that. Arrival at a personal code of standards. Students create their own standards of production and standards of morality. So if you read Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, he did this on his own, but when he was a teenager, Benjamin Franklin came up with, by the way, if you haven't read his autobiography, if you want to learn how to educate a child, read Benjamin Franklin's autobiography. That is great advice on how to educate a child. Okay. But he came up with his own unique code of standards and ethics when he was just a teenager. And he used those to guide him throughout the rest of his life. And then, interestingly enough, George Washington, who also was educated in a very, very informal way, homeschooled. George Washington also homeschooled, like Ben Franklin. I think Ben Franklin had some formal schooling, but not a lot. George Washington wrote, when he was just a teenager, on his own, unprompted, the Rules for Civility, which were his 100 rules of how to handle himself in the public sphere as a gentleman. So both of these men came up on their own, unprompted, homeschooled, with their own unique theories of how to operate in the world. So what I suggest to all parents is once a year, and your children, you should talk to them about this throughout the year. Conversations are powerful, but once a year, you should have your children write down their own unique theory. And it doesn't have to be that in-depth of an assignment because, you know, if they did this every year at New Year's, for example, well, all they have to do is look at their plan from the year prior and just think about it. Now it's not even a lot of work. I just need you to evaluate what you did the year prior. Do you still believe your theory on ethics and morality to be accurate? If not, what was wrong about it or what should be added to it? And now you're developing a human being that's thinking about their morality, that's thinking about the world and how they should operate in it. And I think the value of that is self-explanatory, in my opinion. Okay. Be at ease with the arts. Music, sculpting, architecture, painting, dance, literature, and drama. So this actually goes into, I think I took it a step further, and I was happy. I actually came up with this concept before I saw Gatto outline it, before I found out the elite private schools teach it. So for me, this is what I call creative excellence. And basically, creative excellence, and this is a very important topic. So when you're talking about educating your children, what do you want them to be able to do? What skills do you want them to be able to have? Many of you follow Owen Benjamin. He has creative excellence. What he does on the piano and what he does with rhetoric is very powerful. He's able to make music, and because of that, he's able to push any idea that he wants. He's rhetorically very powerful. He's a person that he has the skills, the rhetorical skills of a wizard, but he combines that with morality, right? He's very into Christianity, into the word of the Bible. So he doesn't use those skills for negative purposes. He uses those skills to push a positive message, which is to be a moral person, to be a good husband, be a good wife, have a family, grow your own food. So he uses those skills for moral purposes, but he has the skills of rhetoric. But creative excellence, right? So a child that can do art, they could put anything they want, depict any thought in their mind, put it on paper. They could do graphic design, so they could take any thought in their mind and put it on a computer screen. They can write original music. They can computer code. Someone that computer code, I mean, you can make entire fictional worlds, right? You can make games like The Sims. Person that can do construction, so they can take wood or whatever it might be and build with their hands. A person that has a background in Slapweasel just posted John Taylor Gatto's link. Definitely check that out. All homeschool parents should be familiar with Gatto. A person with a background in engineering, and today it's easier to teach your children engineering than ever before because there's so much. The STEM movement's actually very good. So if you just go on Pinterest and type in STEM ideas, there is endless STEM assignments that are designed to teach your children from a young age engineering. So now you take this person, they know art, graphic design, music, computer coding, construction, engineering. You get some architecture in there, singing, dance. They have the ability to take any thought in their mind and bring it into the physical world so that other people can see it and interact with it. They teach this at these elite private schools. Don't you think your children should be educated in that way? I mean, that's just a no-brainer, people. And then with what I do, I combined creative excellence with the concept of talent stack. So like, visuals are the strongest form of persuasion. By the way, when I say things like visuals are the strongest form of persuasion, it's because I want you to understand that so that you can teach it to your children from a young age. You want to teach their mind to see. When I was growing up, I didn't see any of this stuff because no one told me. You want to teach them to look for things from a young age. Okay, video capture device. Okay. So, when I say the development of talent stacks, right? We just discussed creative excellence. And you want your child to bring anything they could think of into physical reality so that people can see it and people can interact with it. Tell me that person can't run a successful business? Come on, people. Philosophy. So we want them to be able to think. We talked about intellectual self-defense. Creative excellence, just discussed that. But we want talent stacks. So every day you should be focusing. School doesn't focus. Like, I remember when I was in my master's program and my colleagues were terrified to give presentations in front of their 20 classmates. It's my master's program for birth to two special education, where, we're going to give a presentation for a group project and my group members are, shaking, about to pee their pants. 20 people, their colleagues that they see every day. You want to talk about a failed education system. So we want talent stacks. We want people to be able to speak. We want a child to be very comfortable with public speaking and understand rhetoric and persuasion so that they can transfer their knowledge to other people, making that knowledge become wisdom. Is Brady up, babe? I'm just going to go over the quick talk on talent stacks, and I'm coming right in because I know you got stuff to do. I'm just going to finish this thought, and then I'll finish the rest of the talk tomorrow. I break it into parts because there's a lot of valuable information. Leadership, like I discussed throughout the course of... Oh, are you guys seeing this? I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Are you guys seeing this? Okay. Yeah, all right, you are seeing this. Leadership. We want to focus on, every month, the skills of leadership. Because a person that could speak publicly, has experience with leadership, can lead groups of people. And whatever it is that they're doing, that's going to be beneficial. Especially, we want them to be entrepreneurs if they are running their own business. Hi, Papa. Daddy's going to be right there. Okay, Papa? Okay. Interview skills, that's just a good talent to have. Nutritional intelligence, we want them to be healthy. But then business. We want them to have talent stacks, financial intelligence. We want them to understand the difference between assets and liabilities, what they can do to bring money bring in money versus what they can do that, buying shoes, for example, that's not an asset, that's definitely a liability. Unless the shoes in some way bring you money. So like, all right, so here's a concept, like, You say, okay, buying shoes, well, that's a liability, right? Well, yeah, because you're spending your money. Unless, take one of these girls on Instagram who has like a bazillion followers. They post their pictures all day. Well, what they might do is buy shoes. They buy the most expensive shoes they can find, right? And they go on Amazon and they click on the shoe and they click become an affiliate. And what that means is anyone that buys shoes from them using a link that they give, they'll get a percentage of that sale. So now they take that shoe and they post their, naked picture wearing just their shoes, and all the girls want to be like them and buy the shoe. By the way, you should not do this. There's better ways. Unless I don't want to hate on people, but I wouldn't want my daughter to do that. So they post a picture of them with the shoe. They post the affiliate link to the shoe, and now people buy the shoe. Well, okay, so now the shoe's an asset because it brings money into their pocket. So I'll do a whole talk on financial literacy. These are complex concepts that most people don't understand, unfortunately. But we teach this, and I help parents teach this from a young age to their children. You want them to have financial literacy, to the degree where you want them to understand the difference between passive and active income. So passive income, an example of passive income, someone makes a video on YouTube and it gets millions of views, right? And they get ad revenue. Yeah, Jiggle Belly. I'll do a whole talk on financial literacy because I gotta go because I gotta watch my boy, and it's not something it's not something you teach in, oh, let me talk about it for 1 minute. I'll do a whole talk on financial literacy. So, but like passive income. So you make a video on YouTube, it gets million, Baby Shark, dun, 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 right? They made the Baby Shark song. What does it have, 80 million views? Well, for each view, they get ad revenue from that song. So they had to put in the work to make the song and to film it, to sing it, and then they put it on the internet. And now, without doing any more work, because it was so successful, rarely successful, that child, if their parents do the right thing, will never have to work again. Passive income. Income you don't have to work for. Versus active income, what most people have, which is where you have to go to your 9-to-5 job. Steel toe boots, go mow the lawn. Right. Active income is what most people do. You have to go work your 9-to-5 job. And there's nothing wrong with either one, but you want your child to understand these concepts so that they can structure their life in a better way than most people that don't have the choice. So these are talent stacks. Understanding that. We want them to have skills in public speaking, in marketing. Everything we do is every month we want assignments focused on some type of marketing. Every month we want assignments that focus on some type of sales. So we want skills. I'll get into all this stuff. I'll do individual episodes on each one of these concepts. But financial intelligence, marketing, social media marketing, incorporating, sales, investing, media literacy. These are all talent stacks that a person should have. Rhetoric, persuasion, that unfortunately the public school doesn't teach. So I'm going to cut this talk a little short because my wife has a test for her. She's being an acupuncturist. I'm very proud of my wife. And I'm going to go run around in the yard like a child with my son and my dogs. And we're going to have a great time. So guys, thank you for tuning in. Classical Learner Today on Instagram. Slapweasel, thank you so much. www.classicallearner.com. And really appreciate you guys tuning in. Also on Instagram. So, all right, guys, enjoy your day, and I will catch you guys in the near future.